Welcome to MedHeads, the weekly show that brings a biopsychosocial focus to issues of the day, along with special guests who will showcase their expertise and enthusiasm about their field of practice. Your host, Dr. Fergal Armstrong.
Hello, I'm Dr. Fergal Armstrong, and welcome to this MedHeads episode on the new year and how not to do New Year's resolutions. And of course, we've got with us our dear friend, Maree. How are you, Maree?
Hello, how are you? I'm awesome.
I'm well. So I just love New Year's resolutions. They allow me to express the failures in my life and what I'm going to do in the new year, the hope of the new year that resonates full of achievement, or at least the possibility of achievement, and becoming that perfect individual that I've always aspired to be. And that happens to me every year. New Year's resolutions are easy to make, but they are very difficult to keep up with, aren't they? What do you think about them?
Oh, well, considering the research suggests that something like 64% of New Year's resolutions have gone belly up within the first 4 weeks of their supposed implementation, that's not very well, that's almost like 2/3 of things not going great within 4 weeks.
So I can give you an example of a New Year's resolution that doesn't follow that pattern.
Oh,
Applications for divorce peak at the end of January. So people decide they've had enough and they get rid of their partners. That's the one resolution that they do keep.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Applications for divorce peak in the end of January, early February.
Because they just at the belief about having somebody survive another 12 months with their spouse is too gruesome to bear.
And I also think that February the 14th, Valentine's Day, is also a particular additional trigger to that process of, I'm surrounded by people who are all happy and, giving each other cards. And
I can't stay another day in this loveless relationship.
All I want to do
I
is
didn't know
stab my
that. Well, there
spouse
you
in the
go.
eyes. Yeah. But let's assume that we're not looking to divorce our spouse. So, I mean, the new year is an opportunity to recap on the old and make some kind of planning for the new year, the future. It is a useful opportunity to take stock of the situation and ask yourself where you're going.
Yes.
But is there such a thing as a valuable New Year's resolution?
I think the difficult thing with New Year's resolutions is they're often made on a whim, and they're usually made when someone's actually intoxicated or otherwise substance affected. That's usually been my experience. I don't know whether that's, I mean, you'd see it in the area of addictions, but that's certainly what I've certainly seen. And it's these kind of, attaching to kind of these vague statements. And, when we think about things like SMART goals, when we're often making a bold statement such, I'm just going to make, 2021 my year. I'm going to be happy.
Right.
Or
now,
I'm just going
let me stop you there. You've used the word SMART goal. Now, explain to us what a SMART goal is.
Okay, so it comes from the abbreviations of like that. If the goal we're working towards is going to be SMART, it's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's timely.
Yes.
And so when we're looking at that's the acronym for SMART. But what often happens is, people will make a New Year's resolution and it's on a whim. And the other thing, I don't know whether you've heard it with your patients, is it often comes from the should. The should statements, it's a should statement rather than a value statement. And
well, explain what a should statement is and what a value statement is. You can't just use these terms without explaining them.
Okay, so the shoulds get traction only because it's coming from that almost controlling aspect of self. Like, I don't know about this, but if I say to myself, oh, look, I really should go and throw the load of washing on, I don't know about you, but for me, it's very half-bottomed. It's like, no, begrudgingly done. It's like, I'm doing this because I have to or because I should, which is scripted. Whereas if I turn around and look at my values, I don't believe personally that the shoulds actually get the momentum. They might momentarily, give you a little bit of impetus for something, but I've seen it more often than not happen where, oh, well, it's not, this isn't doing it for me now. It's not actually kind of really, it's not compelling enough.
So tell me about the values.
values are a very, very different. Values are your why. Values are the things that will get you out of the bed, even on days that you particularly may not want to. The best statement I ever heard from someone was, when you're interested, you'll do what's convenient. But when you are inspired and when you are motivated, you will do whatever it takes. And I don't know about you, but I can feel a certain energy in those two, in the comparison between those two statements. You know, you're just a bit ho-hum, ho-hum. It's just a bit of something you're kind of interested in. But when it like runs through the veins in your body, like the momentum is huge. And that's what will pull you through on the days when you really don't feel like doing something.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, I mean, you've just touched on your using of the word values, your using of the word momentum. That triggers in me motivation. And dare I say it, motivational interviewing.
Yes.
Yes. What's motivational interviewing?
So motivational interviewing is where we're talking to a person about and how we actually elicit their why. So motivational interviewing is where we talk to somebody about, you know, especially if we're talking about substance abuse, we might be looking at, you know, well, okay, well, let's be, you know, realistic about this. There must be some aspects to what you're doing that's giving you something, otherwise you wouldn't be doing what it's doing. But let's also look at the other. And we don't get into battle whenever we're doing motivational interview and somebody goes, like, I'll never forget when I did training and someone was talking about, oh, but my feet don't get like her back was out. She was needing to see a physiotherapist or something, but she was going, no, but my back never goes out when I wear my high heel shoes. And like, we're talking about like massive, big heels. Instead of getting into battle about let's have an argument over the shoes and the size of the heel, let's just let her say that, and then let's just move on to something else rather than getting into the battle, because the battle often only creates more of the, well, this is why I'm determined to keep wearing my shoes. Or for a person who's using substances, I'm just going to keep drinking more because that's what I want to do. And we actually, without awareness, bring out the rebel again and make the rebel be the one that's doing all the speaking, whereas motivational interviewing doesn't do that.
So, I mean, I think you've alluded to this very well, that motivational interviewing allows the therapist to go in a dance, a cooperative dance with the patient.
Yeah.
So it's different from other types of counseling where you're basically telling the patient what to do. In this relationship, you're dancing with the patient. And one of the things that I use, which is part of motivational interviewing, is the creation of ambivalence. So there are questions that I would ask. Well, okay, so you want to keep using drugs. You want to keep eating chocolate. You don't want to lose weight. You don't want to go to the gym. You don't want to go on a diet. How important is it for you to do all of these things on a scale of 1 to 10? And if they say a 5, we'll say, well, why isn't it a 2 or why isn't it an 8? And then the second question I will sometimes ask is, so what I'm hearing from you is that you don't want to make these changes.
Yeah.
Can you think of any harms that you're experiencing as a result of not doing these changes? Is there a downside to what you want to continue to do? So I'm not telling them, oh, you're a naughty boy if you continue to drink, you'll become cirrhotic, or you're a naughty girl if you continue to eat chocolate, you'll become, fat, or you'll get health problems, or you'll exacerbate your diabetes. I'm not saying that. I'm asking the patient to verbalize his or her own belief system around the potential harms of that continued behavior. So I'm not shouting at them, I'm not judging them.
No, and they've actually got to hear themselves, and that's actually how the threads kind of get offered that people can grab onto. And the beautiful thing is that you haven't agitated them out of the room, or actually evoke their defences to only make them reinforce why they're doing what they're doing. So it never feels, it all comes, when we do motivational interviewing well, it's all coming from them. They're actually bringing up all of the pros, the cons, the ambivalence, the incongruency, and all of that. So it's actually really, really good.
Yeah, and there's another issue about dealing with sustained talk. So there's 2 types of conversations that you can have with a patient when you're doing motivational interviewing. One is that this sustained talk where I'm fixated in my status quo. I don't want to stop using drugs. I don't want to stop drinking. I don't want to stop eating health badly. That's all sustained talk. And then there's change talk, which is I realize that I need to stop doing X, Y, and
Yes.
Z because it's harmful for me, or the benefits of stopping are so great. That's change talk. And a big lesson for me was actually realizing that when I heard sustained talk from a patient, I had to swallow my urge to interrupt them and get them to do change talk. Whereas now I've
Yes.
learned, well, actually, if I hear sustained talk, all I do is reflect it back to them. All right, so there's no way that there are no health issues for you, or it's great where you are because you're keeping to take these drugs. I reflect back the sustained talk, and then they themselves start to generate the change talk with which I can work from. So they
It's
generate
parents.
the change talk. And that means that I, as the therapist, am not telling them, well, actually, you need to be thinking in a different way. All I'm doing is reflecting back to them what they've already said, and eventually outgrows that little green shoot, that glimmer of hope that is the beginning of change talk.
Yes, and I don't know whether you've noticed, but one of my clinical supervisors said to me, never ever work harder than your clients.
Yes.
And I think you touched on something absolutely beautiful, and that is that when you just let them sit with their own awarenesses and realize that, like one of the things that's often taught me so much about the work that I love is that I have incredible respect for people's defenses. And once I realized that if I don't go into battle with their defenses, they will, the aspects of this will emerge. And exactly like what you just did, you
Yes.
don't have to, once you overcome that intense feeling to say, oh, but blah, 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 this is what the research tells us about what you're actually doing to your body, the more that we can just sit there and just roll, like talk about this, roll with the resistance, just feed it
Yeah.
back. And then when the ball lands back in their court, they have to do something with that information. But the
Yeah.
beautiful aspect of that is they're actually there's an empowerment process throughout that whole journey. And I think you bring up that, change is not something you just do on a whim. Like change requires planning, it requires commitment, it requires sacrifice in a lot of instances. And there's a lot of aspects to change that happen more than just a one simple statement on New Year's as they're, putting up their
Yes.
wine to the moon, going, hey, there's a lot that goes
Yes.
on.
I'm going to be perfect next year. Hey.
And we also need to realise that, when we're considering any sort of change or whatever that might be, or a goal that we're working to, we need to be really considerate of the ripple effect that whatever we're choosing to do, and also the sustainability of the change. Because I
Well,
think a lot of people make decisions, they don't
you're
take into
telling me
consideration environment.
you're telling me all these key words,
Yeah.
and there's a cycle that has all
Yes.
these key words in it. And let me share that with you. So we know that there is a cycle of change. And that cycle of change starts from the pre-contemplation to the contemplation to the preparation, the action, and the maintenance phase. And so all of these key words that you're telling me fit into that cycle of change. So can you explain that cycle? And first of all, explain what is pre-contemplation, and then we'll go through the rest of the stages.
Yeah. So pre-contemplation, I don't see people who are pre-contemplators generally in the work that I do, because as far as they're concerned, nothing's even got into their psyche that there's something not working. Pre-contemplators you may actually see who have arrived into an emergency department with a broken leg because they were substance affected and got on a skateboard. You might be able to, they're not going there because they want to actually give up substances. They're going there because they've broken their leg. But generally pre-contemplators, you won't see them engaging in any sort of therapy because it really hasn't got into conscious awareness that there's something not right.
Yeah, so we know that pre-contemplation is defined as not considering a change for the next 6 months.
Yes.
But you can work with pre-contemplators. Motivational interviewing is great for working with pre-contemplators because all you have to do in that stage with MI is, as I said before, is just create them their own ambivalence.
Yes.
Maybe what you're doing is causing you harms as well as being fun, or maybe there's another way.
Yes. And I guess you in a GP capacity, you would probably have that. And I mean, maybe in some ways, yeah, I do get the pre-contemplators. They come to me about this issue, but then we realise that this issue is actually in the
Actually,
mix.
yes,
And yes, so
yes,
you're right, you can actually get it, but that's not their primary reason for
that's
seeking help
not
to
their
begin with, because they
primary. So
haven't.
the ticket of admission to whatever clinical care they're getting is not actually the real issue. So the broken
No.
leg is not the real issue. Yeah,
No, that's exactly right. But you,
yeah,
but you are right. You can use motivational interviewing
yeah.
for the pre-contemplator, absolutely. And then we move to contemplation, and that's sort of more of the toggle of the seesaw. You know, it's that, oh, I don't know, what would my life look like if I didn't have X, Y, or Z in it? And then there can be this kind of tipping of the seesaw backwards and forwards, and that's some people can stay in that in
Yeah,
that space for quite a while,
yeah. So they're thinking
and
about
then
it, but they're
yeah, they're
they're they're
toying with the idea.
they're still not convinced of the overall benefit. But again, the ambivalence is increasing. They're thinking
Yes.
about the benefits of change versus the benefits of the status quo, and there's an internal battle. And so, again, for me, motivational interviewing is absolutely crucial in that phase because
Yes.
it's an opportunity for me to increase their ambivalence, increase the amount of change talk. And change talk is a very powerful tool to get people to actually
Yes.
go on to the next stage. So, in the first two stages, pre-contemplation and contemplation, for me, motivational interviewing is absolutely key at getting people through onto the next stage.
Yes, which is the preparation stage. So it's that,
Yes,
what do I need to do to, to actually induce some level of change?
yes,
That could be anything from, maybe I'll find out what's around, what do I need to do, what
yes,
pharmacotherapies might be on offer, do I need
yeah.
to go to a group? Do I just plan on, instead of doing whatever I do every day of the week, can I just do it on the weekend?
Now, for me, the preparation phase is actually, oh, sorry, not for me, but I think that advertisers prey on people in the preparation phase, especially in the new year. That's the time to go out and buy all the gym clothes, buy the new sneakers, get the expensive gym membership, get the lifestyle product, get the healthy salad delivered to the house deal. All of that, all of those advertisements, offering change,
Yes,
offering success, prey on
yes,
people who are in that in that preparation phase, who get a buzz on preparing
yeah,
for the actual change. Now, to
yes,
go through, I mean, this cycle of change suggests that to actually get to action, you've got to go through preparation. Now, that's not strictly true, but a lot of people I see get stuck in the preparation phase. They buy the gym equipment,
yeah,
they buy the gym membership,
yes. They get the
and then they get
the
stuck.
delivery of the salad.
Yes, they get the $10 lettuce leaf delivered to the front door. But they get stuck there.
Yes.
And by the time February comes, they haven't actually gone to the gym or worn the shoes or used the shoes, and they're
No, and the
back eating
lettuce has gone
chocolate.
out to the rabbit.
Yes. So I tend to use a different kind of, I suppose motivational interviewing can help with there, but I tend to start going into kind of CBT methodologies that when I see people stuck in the preparation phase, thinking about the antecedents, the behaviors, and the consequences. What's your view on this aspect of change?
Yeah, very much so. And this is where I think when I do a lot of the work, it's looking at those unconscious blockers that get in the way, those things that
Yeah,
sort of sabotage. Because you're right, when we're talking about the contemplation stage, it's where the incongruency becomes too unbearable, that it
yes,
tips into the stage where a person can't live like this. I was only talking to someone the other day, and they were saying that they drank really significantly for probably 15 years. And then one day, just after one too many blackouts, they just said, okay, my body's obviously telling me I can't cope with this anymore.
yeah,
And, you know, the, I don't know that she had to go through her own process, but I don't know how much of her own process she was actually going through in the back of her own mind anyway.
Yeah.
But she just decided that was it, that, you know, that the way that she was living was just no longer going to be sustainable for her. So her why was obviously that, you know, it was now becoming not so much fun. And that cycle had actually ended for her and her aspect of what she was doing.
Yeah. So we kind of think about preparation phases as a kind of a month. You know, it can take about a month to, you know, prepare to actually make this change. And then, of course, we go to the action stage.
Yes.
That's when you first get on the treadmill. That's when you first open the door to the gym. That's when you walk past the bottle shop without actually going in.
Yeah.
That can be very challenging, and people do need support in the action phase because it's hard. It takes, you know, if you listen to these motivational speakers like Tony Robbins, you know, it takes 28 days or 30 days or 90 days
Well, the
to
21
change
days,
your
yeah.
life, you know. But when you're in the middle of day 15, so if you're on January the 15th and you're still eating your lettuce leaf and you're going to the gym, it's exhausting. So what kind of things do you offer for people in that stage of change?
So I've always found myself that if some people have got an image of somebody that they particularly aspire to or they're motivated by, I think some of those prompts, the other thing I cannot emphasize enough is environment. You know, environment is such a significant part for change. It's just absolutely crucial. The other thing it's important to remember is, you know, to be clear with the people I work with, I'm always asking, you know, be clear about what you want, why you want it, and for whom. Whom else is either going to be, if to make sure that you're not doing it for somebody else. I don't know whether you've
Yes,
noticed this, but I found that things are very
definitely.
short-lived. If they're doing it because people might be able to go, look, I'll mow the lawn for my loved one because, you know, that'll just shut her up and she'll be happy, right? That's not a huge sacrifice, really. But if somebody then says, look, I'm going to commit myself to a 4-year law degree when I'm really not passionate about law and I'd rather be out there sitting there, you know, working in the RSPCA,
Yeah,
something's going to give. Something is
yeah,
going to give. So that stuff
yeah.
around when we're talking about like the action stage and, you know, people are having, you know, heightened anxiety every time they walk past the bottle shop or, you know, all of a sudden their palate's going off, for goodness sake, I want something more than that scungy lettuce leaf.
Yeah.
We're really thinking about, you know, how do we keep the flames ignited? You know, what else can we
Yes.
add? You know,
Yeah.
and I think
That's really
reward is
important
really
what you've just said.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
reward is really important. Like people need to, instead of just going, oh, great, I'm going to get this reward at 6 months because blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what? The brain's going to go, hey, where's the novelty in it for me to sit through this for the next 6 months? What else? You know, we need to give little incremental rewards along that journey. Otherwise, we lose momentum, we run out of steam, and we just give up and abandon the whole idea.
Yeah. So what you've said really, really chimes with me that meaningful change can only occur when that change is relevant to you. You
Yes.
cannot change for somebody else. You just can't. Eventually
No.
the cracks will appear in this facade of commitment. And the second thing, as you said, is rewards. Now, we also need to think within the cycle of change, once you've done a month of action, then you start going into this phase, which is the maintenance phase. And people say that if you've done maintenance for 6 months, you're probably there, but that can be hard as well. Other people suggest that you're stuck in a maintenance phase for 5 years until the risk of relapse occurs, or sorry, disappears.
Mm,
So at any stage during the cycle of change, you can always revert. And
very much
when you're in
so.
the action and maintenance phase, you can relapse into the previous behavior. So having a way of dealing with relapse in whatever change you're trying to make is a really important part of the whole cycle.
Yes.
So how do you deal with the with patients who have relapsed?
So the tragic thing is so many people, I think, run out and don't come back. They think that, oh, I've put all this, you know, the counsellor or the AOD specialist has put all this energy into me and I've disappointed them. So they end up with a double whammy. They've potentially, you know, potentially lost their partners who have gone, oh, you've done it again. You know, this is, you know, I can't deal with this anymore. and they can essentially feel very abandoned, and they actually then almost abandon that part of themselves that's lost sight of, that they've done so well for so many months. And that's where I think that we've got to be really aware of the cognitive stuff, and also actually bring this in as part of the discussion much earlier. Even though, like in the maintenance space, I don't know about you, but I've seen my clients get all uncomfortable, and they're like, but if you start talking about it, it's like you think I'm going to do it. And it's like, no, we need to make sure this is what's going to happen for so many people. It's not that we're wanting to put it out there that they're going to stumble, but the reality is we need to call it for what it is. It's highly likely people will have a wobble. The wobble doesn't have to be the complete fall. If people are aware that this is what they will need to negotiate as part of relapse prevention, is to realize that there's going to be some risky situations, and that there is humanness in that, and to make sure that they don't run off thinking that they're going to disappoint the counsellor or disappoint the therapist or whatever that is. That's the quicker they can get back in, the better.
Yeah. So this idea of the fracturing of the relationship between the patient and the therapist needs to be addressed. There's no such thing as a fractured relationship around relapse. Relapse, we don't wish people relapse, but we know it happens. And you might be the lucky one that never has a relapse, but we know it happens. Change is associated with relapse. You don't get it the first time sometimes. You might, I've heard people say that you need to go through this cycle of change maybe 7 times before you end up, in long-term maintenance. So that's point number 1. Yeah. So just because you've had a wobble doesn't mean it has to be a tumultuous descent into complete and utter original behavior. You can get back.
And the other thing I can say, absolutely. And the other thing I was just going to say is, I say to clients, you can't have had a setback if you'd never moved forward. It's impossible.
Yeah. Yes. So when I see someone who's going through a relapse, you're absolutely right. We need to talk about it before it happens. But then when it does happen, I use the questions how, what, why, where, and when. And the whole idea is to have a really good discussion of the antecedents to that relapse, and then look at what happened, and then look at what might change the next time you come across those antecedents, because life is full of triggers. You can't avoid triggers, but what you can do is learn to control your response to triggers. Yeah. How do you deal with that?
And work your environment as well. And I think you're absolutely right. Instead of it, coming from this place of, of being punitive to self, if we can invite that compassion, and this is where people get, what's the word? They think that if they hold themselves an offering of compassion, that compassion is going to be exploited, and they're going to run rings around their own self-compassion and then become overly indulgent. And it's actually not the case. The compassion is actually the aspect of self that someone would say, hey, like if a kid falls over, you don't go up and then, scold them for falling over. You help them back up. And when we can start to build that internal resource that says, okay, look, maybe going for those after work drinks at the end of the day where I, didn't sleep well the night before and decided to end up having an error of judgment. I was tired, I hadn't eaten, and then I decided to just, have that one drink, and then I ended up blind drunk and ended up in the city somewhere. Like, we need to realize that, okay, there was a lot of other variables. Like people say, oh, there was a fork in the road. That fork in the road is often so many steps back. It doesn't just happen right when people make that decision.
Exactly.
There could have been other things. And that's what we need to be, just as a curious, explorer of, okay, what, let's just look at this with a fresh set of eyes. Let's just look at it as if we were, conducting a bit of a social experiment here. What's happened? And when we start to realize that there was variables involved in this, then there's, when we look at them for the impact that those variables have, we're more likely to be able to sit in with that space of compassion and get them to sit and internalize that same compassion that they have in the therapeutic room, and actually bring that as part of their psyche. I've had many clients say, Maree, I've actually heard you, no, they're not psychotic, but they've actually had, I've heard your voice and what you would have said. And that was the thing that stopped me from doing X, Y, or Z.
All right. So, I mean, it's important to understand that, both of us come from backgrounds where we deal with substance use disorders, but This cycle of change that we've just described, going from the pre-contemplative to preparation to action to maintenance, that cycle of change, including the management of relapse, it can be used as a tool to analyze change in any aspect of an individual's life. It's not just the preserve of people in AOD counseling. So if you are someone who does want to make a New Year's resolution,
yes,
don't make the resolution when you're blind drunk on New Year's Eve. Think about it. Give yourself an opportunity to think about what is your SMART goal, the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-framed goal that you want to achieve, and then understand that cycle of change so that by the end of the year, you are still in that maintenance phase.
That's correct.
So here's another way of looking at it. A New Year's resolution is not just for the new year, it's for life.
Exactly.
Maree, thank you so much for your time. As usual,
Thank you for having me.
To talk to you.
And have a lovely new year.
Yeah, I don't have any resolutions this year, by the way, because I'm perfect already. Either that or I'm just too lazy. I'm still in the pre-contemplative stage. I'll let you decide. That's all for today's MedHeads. Thank you for watching. My name's Dr. Fergal Armstrong.